The following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates. It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media. Rick Jensen on 1150 AM, 1017 FM, WDEL.
Well, he should. Look, I've been a very, very happy and satisfied client of Dan White and Associates, financial planners specializing in retirement income. Dan Simon is one of these guys. His office is in the Middletown area. Where exactly is your office there, Dan?
So we're in Sandhill Plaza. Good afternoon, Rick. Right behind the Hampton, right in town there.
Oh, that's convenient. You guys have clients from all over the place, so that's probably very, very convenient. What kind of great tip do you have for folks today?
So we're going to talk about the exciting subject of spousal rollovers on IRAs.
Actually, if you are a spouse and you're thinking, hey, I want to roll over some money in a retirement account, it's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Well, so I'm specifically referring to beneficiaries as the spouse.
Okay.
So obviously when one spouse dies, assuming their living spouse is their primary beneficiary, there's some advantages to having a spouse as a beneficiary. They've got the ability to do what's called a spousal rollover, where a non-spouse beneficiary can't do a spousal rollover, and in most cases, they're subject themselves to the new 10-year rule and have to deplete that account. So there's really three options for a spousal rollover for a beneficiary. The first thing they can do is a direct transfer. They can also do a rollover as well, and then they can treat the account as if it's their own. So they leave it set up as an inherited IRA, and they do nothing with it. Now, all three of these methods achieve essentially the same result of a spousal rollover, but a direct transfer is typically the safest way to get it done. It avoids potential pitfalls that come into play with the 60-day rollover, where if the account owner themselves had to take RMDs, then they got 60 days to do that, and it can turn into a big mess. So in most cases, the direct transfer of inherited assets is the safest way to get the spousal rollover taken care of.
Wow. Yeah, I tried to get that spousal rollover last night. My wife said, you're not qualified. All right. So that was a moron imperative. I had to throw that in there. So regarding the 10-year rule, though, this is interesting. Yeah, I know that now if you inherit money through an IRA, you got to get rid of that in 10 years. You got to take the money out because the government wants the tax money from it. So am I to understand, all of us listening, are we all supposed to understand then that if it's a spousal rollover, then you don't have to get all that money and take it all out and pay the taxes and everything within 10 years?
That's correct. They're not subject to the 10-year rule.
Gotcha.
So that's a big deal for a spouse. They don't have to apply by the 10-year rule. The other thing I'll point out is that if the beneficiary, the spouse that is still living, is under 59 and a half when they receive those funds, and the account owner, the original account owner that had passed away, was over 59 and a half, it's typically beneficial to leave the surviving spouse's IRA as it was. Because if they need to take money out of it, they can just take a withdrawal as beneficiary.
Yeah.
As opposed to if they were the account owner and rolled it into their own IRA, they would subject themselves to a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So there are some nuances when it comes to rolling money from one spouse to the other upon death.
I didn't know that. Yeah, you take money out as a beneficiary and you don't get hammered as badly as if you owned it.
Correct.
Wow. And still, though, you're required to take out some distributions every year, though, aren't you?
Upon the age of, wherever their RMD age is at that point, if it's 73, then they would be subject to start taking RMDs.
So this is different from an inherited IRA, like if you get something from mom or dad and you're, let's say, 50 years old, and they say, okay, we calculate it this way, and you have to take money out every year, as opposed to that.
That's correct. Yeah,
Wow.
It's a lot different for a spouse.
All right, it's good to have someone like you, Dan, who knows what the heck they're talking about, because this happens with most folks, and we go online, read things, and do the wrong thing. Next thing you know, we lose half our money. And by the way, that's not an exaggeration. You can lose half the money. It's insane the way you get penalized for these things. Dan Simon, Dan White and Associates, 888-690-8820. Give him a call. And he'd love to talk with you and help you out as well. 888-690-8820. And this Sunday morning, Dan White of Dan White Associates at 7 a.m. brings us On the Money, right?
On the money, June is what I believe we refer to as Annuity Awareness Month. So Dan's going to be talking about the ins and outs of annuities and how they fit into some people's retirement plans.
No, I've done that as well, and I'm really glad that I have. So On the Money, Sunday morning at 7 a.m. here at 11:50 a.m., 101.7 FM, WDEL. Dan Simon, thanks for your time. Thanks for your work, man.
No problem, Rick. I'm going to borrow that spousal rollover joke.
Watch the audience. No, you're right. See, I know that you would laugh, but you'd be laughing at me, not really with me, and I totally accept that. Just be careful you say it. It might be somebody for whom that's actually happened and they're not happy. All right, take care. All right. Bye-bye. All righty, it's 302-529-1017.